Holy
So,
cow.
we usually say where we live, and there's a lot of people here, but we'll just try to go quick, I guess. And I live near Mid Springs.
Go wrong if you
John
don't
Byrd,
put it up.
CCAC, off of St. George.
Valerie, I'm a CCAC, and I live in Old Trail.
Across the suburbs, I live down in 250. 204 Highland.
My uncle, I live in Quarry Farm.
Doug Bates, Whitehall Road.
Jenny Moore, Blue Ridge Avenue.
Johnny Keane, Batesville.
And Mel, I represent you on the board, and I live in Lewisville.
Brian Day, Emerald Ridge.
Back there?
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, you too.
Joe Miller, I live in, where do I live? I just moved. Foothill Crossing.
Ben Jones, Parks and Village.
Tim Colson, Emerald Ridge, and Crozet Community Association.
Jim Piles, Old Trail.
Chuck Brown, Old Trail.
Frank Cerrone, Old Trail.
Maybe just go front row. You want to get started?
John Greenfather, Old Trail.
Paul Grady, Meacham's River.
Steve Bechtel, Old Trail.
Tony Townsend from Old Trail.
Tyler Hayes, West Hall.
Joe Kashansky, Hayden Lane. Todd Barker, West Hall.
Tom Crown, River.
Jennifer Matthews, Old Trail. Old Trail.
Bill Lynch, I actually don't live in Crozet, I'm up in Stony Point, but I'm here for the Crozet Sports.
I'm Cameron Landell, I'm a senior planner with the Albemarle County Department of Community Development.
I'm Megan Adosif, I'm a principal planner with Community Development.
Andrew Newport, neighborhood planner, community development. Chris Fuller, Oak Forest.
I'm Allison Rabel with the Daily Progress.
Charlie Almas, also with the Crozet Sports team.
Spokane Burns, Old Trail.
Alan Lee, Old Trail.
Mid Hardy, Old Trail.
Michelle Wright, St. George.
Marvin Rankin, Old Traders.
Terry Miyamoto here for the Crozet Trails crew, and I live in the Highlands.
Paige Foster, Highland.
Pat McConville, Old Trail. Muir.
Ellie Johansson, Gray Rock. Catherine Bentley, The Summit at Old Trail.
Marshall Fainted, Old Trail.
Ray Grant, Old Trail.
Dennis Yutchison, Orchard Acres.
Lauren Estes, Western Ridge. Teresa Curry, Old Trail.
Nick Hart, Ivy, Old Trail business owner.
Warren McLaughlin, Gray Rock.
Jess Byrd, Midway Road.
Paul Van Vliet, Half Mile Branch Road.
Susan Rohrbach, Jarman's Cut Road.
Howie Epstein, Old Trail.
Brian Ritter, Old Trail.
David Deaton, Old Trail.
Jim Duncan, Crozet.
Mike Marshall, Crozet Gazette, Mid Springs.
Lisa Martin, Crozet Gazette.
We got this.
Neil Evans, Old Trail.
Old Trail.
Bonnie Smith, Old Trail.
Joan McCowan, Old Trail.
Andy Huffmeyer, Old Trail.
Mike Peters, Forest Lake.
Justin Bird, Midway Road. Dave Rockman, Old Trail.
Nicole Stroh, I'm at the city of Charlottesville, I live in the city of Charlottesville. I'm here with Chris Fuller for Bandage Road.
Great. Okay. Thank you for coming. Did everybody get a chance to look at the minutes? Thank you, Mike.
Move approval.
Yes, all, okay. So we are going to start with Crozet Sports, and Megan is going to give a little bit of an introduction to the process.
Good evening. So I'm just going to give an overview for both Bamboo Grove and Crozet Sports on the process and a little bit of a planning 101, so everybody in the room who's not familiar with these concepts is all on the same page. So this will cover rezoning. So this is a community meeting. This is the first part of projects that come in of the development review process. And this is really to get public input on applications. So how does development happen in Albemarle County? Like I said, this is the first part of the process, the legislative review. On the far left is where we are right now. And then it goes through the process with the Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors ultimately making a decision. And then it will move through a site plan, review process, and then construction. So what zoning is? Most cities and counties have laws where you can, about where you can build and you can't build, and what property owner can build depends on what zone the property is in. So the county has different groups of land areas or zones to protect the health, safety, and welfare of its residents. There are two main ways that the zoning ordinance groups compatible developments. It's the use of the building, residential, commercial, institutional. And so let's say you have build a house and someone builds a factory next door. The other is size and shape of buildings is controlled by zoning. So the building height, how far it's set back from the street, the square footage, etc., is part of the zoning ordinance. So the zoning ordinance dictates what can be done by right today. And what is the comprehensive plan? So the Albemarle County Comprehensive Plan establishes a 20-year vision. I'm sure a lot of you in the room right now are working on the process to update the Crozet Master Plan, which is a part of the comprehensive plan, and it sets the policies and recommendations with communities, each of our development areas. So again, each of our development area has a master plan. Crozet is one of those development areas, and it contains the future land use recommendations for properties. And sometimes the zoning and future land use doesn't match. Actually, that happens a lot in the county. On this side of the screen, you can see the zoning map for all of our development areas, and this side is the land use, and you can see the various mismatch of different colors. So tonight we're going to talk about rezoning, two rezoning applications. What that is if an owner seeks to change the zoning district, the current zoning, and in the case of Crozet Sports, they're coming in on a property that's already been rezoned and they're amending that rezoning. So that requires Board of Supervisors approval. And so that each of the applications is reviewed by county staff and other agencies, including VDOT, the Service Authority, Ravenna Water and Sewer Authority, etc., zoning division, and then the Planning Commission, and then ultimately the Board of Supervisors. So what we review is an application's consistency with the future land use plan, the Crozet Master Plan, the state and local regulations, ARB, Architectural Review Board if it's in an entrance corridor. So I'm going to move right into, that's just the overview of Crozet Sports application, and Valerie's going to give a detailed presentation on the proposal, but I'm just going to touch on the existing zoning and then what the comprehensive plan says for this property. So the existing zoning on this property, as many of you might know, is Neighborhood Model District. It was rezoned in 2004, and again, it was updated in 2015. This specific proposal is for Block 19, so I'll just orient everybody. Route 250 is here. Here's the entrance to Old Trail Drive. And as you're coming in Old Trail Drive from Route 250, it's the property on the right side. It's Block 19 within the Old Trail NMD. Right now, the existing uses permitted in that block are detached and attached single-family dwellings, accessory apartments, farm stands, public utilities, stormwater management facilities, and personal wireless facilities. And the new uses proposed are that they're requesting is indoor athletic facilities, commercial recreation establishments, and community center. There's some language you can see up here about the description for Block 19, comprised of within their code of development that was approved with the original rezoning, that talks about how this block was considered exclusively a single-family residential, and it was an edge district to provide a transition from the higher densities within Old Trail Village Center to the edge of the property. So the master plan does have specific language about this area of Crozet and specifically the commercial uses. You'll hear from Valerie about how they're planning on setting the building back from Route 250, but I just wanted I thought it was a good time to bring up the language that's in your comp plan as you're looking at amending it as well. For this area, it talks about, it is recommended for neighborhood density residential, and it has language that non-residential uses in this designation include institutional, such as places of worship, public and private schools, and early childhood education centers, daycare centers, and preschools. It states that neighborhoods serving retail commercial areas and office uses of less than 5,000 square feet may be allowed by exception only in the neighborhood density residential areas located within half a block of downtown along Blue Ridge Avenue and east of Firehouse Lane. So it's very specific. It also goes on to state in the western section of the master plan that no commercial use is recommended on 250 in order to retain 250 west as a scenic byway. Additional commercial uses will add traffic to this road, which would damage the rural character of Route 250 West. It does show a connection to schools in the location that Valerie will show that they are providing a connection there. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Valerie, and I can talk about the timeline moving forward after she finishes her presentation.
Sorry, so switch computers.
I'd rather have a picture of the bamboo guy.
I'll let Justin go ahead
Yeah,
and
so
start.
while Valerie's setting up everything, I'm gonna go ahead and just provide some background. First of all, I wanted to thank everyone who attended the Old Trail Town Hall meeting last Wednesday. That was something that wasn't a meeting that was required by the county, but just for the sake of being 100% transparent about our project to the community, we want to have that additional meeting. We had over 75 Old Trail residents attend. Really received a lot of supportive comments, a lot of really valuable input that we were able to take from that and take with us throughout the process. Unfortunately, between then and now, I've contracted quite a cough and cold for my third grader. I'm sure a lot of you parents of young kids can relate, but unfortunately, it's just that time of year. So I'm just going to provide an intro to some of our team, and then also give some kind of background of what all has taken place in the last 18 months to get to this point, and then Valerie and the rest of the team will take over. So I've met a lot of you already, but my name is Justin Byrd. My wife, Jessica, and I started Crozet Sports back in 2018 with really the mission of creating an organization that would serve the growing athletic, health, and academic needs of our community. We're all aware of the situation we're in with not only reaching capacity with building space for our schools, but also lack of field space, lack of indoor gyms and training space. So, we feel like this is a solution to that problem, particularly the location that Valerie will discuss later, being just a perfect location, being a true extension of the ACS and school campuses in West Carolina. My background is in fitness, healthcare administration. I have a master's degree in healthcare administration. I'm a former NCAA baseball athlete. I coach in the area, many sports, but mainly baseball. I also serve on the board of directors for Peachtree. My wife, Jessica, she is currently a licensed teacher for Albemarle County Public Schools. She's coached field hockey and soccer at the high school level. She also has over 10 years of camp experience. Andy Hellfire is also part of our team. He's just been an integral part of getting us to this point with all the project page and the promotions that you see on our website. That's all him. He's got over 23 years of television and marketing experience, also serves on the board for Peachtree, which we have to see a lot of familiar faces, also fellow Peachtree board members, which we appreciate you coming out. And really, we're just three individuals of a large group of people that have had their hands in this project to get us to this point. And so again, we really just appreciate all the support throughout the process. When we first started Crozet Sports in the fall of 2018, the vision at that time was really just an indoor facility. We really had no intentions of starting pre-facility operations. So the first thing we did was we launched an interest survey to the community. We left that open for about a 4 to 5 week period. We had over 2,000 Crozet residents respond, and the support was just overwhelming. And it's something that it far exceeded our expectations, and that quickly was an indicator for us anyway that we need to move forward with this. It's something that's worth chasing for the community. And so we continue with that process. We also received a lot of feedback from the community residents saying, hey, we're very interested in the survey or the indoor facility, but what can we do to help? But also, what can we go ahead and do now to go ahead and operate pre-facility? Because we have so many needs that are not being met in our community. And so we went ahead and became operational as a sports academy, offering kids camps, sports clinics, summer camps. We've got our second one coming up that we've opened registrations for. We're trying to do what we can for the community as we continue with the process of the indoor facility. With the indoor facility, that design process, we were so fortunate to have so many people part of that process. We met with school leadership, we met with county officials, we met with all the leaders of really all the athletic organizations in Albemarle County, as well as athletic departments for our schools. And really, it gave us a great indication from that feedback of exactly how the facility needed to be designed so that we can not only meet the current needs, but also projecting out 15, 20, 30 years, what those needs might be. And so that was really helpful for us, and we really appreciate that. Also wanted to mention before we get too much further into the presentation that also for the sake of being extremely transparent to the community throughout this process, we've designed a project landing page on the Crozet Sports website. A lot of you I know have already viewed that, and I appreciate it, but it's crozetsports.com, and it's right on the landing page, and you can go to the project page and you can read about really any of the details that we're going to discuss today, whether it be traffic, whether it be looking at the 3D renderings or spending more time kind of digesting the planned programs and services. But we just encourage you to read that and really study that so that you're well informed about the project. And so that's something we just want to make sure you do. And then, I think that's, you want to talk about location?
Yeah, I just was going to suggest you have that softball.
So something, one of the many things that we've done recently is, again, trying to fill as many needs as possible as we're recognizing them. And a lot of those needs, parents, community members are coming to us and saying, hey, what about an inclusive basketball program? And so that's something that we recently started. We also had an opportunity to assist with the establishment of middle school baseball and softball program for the first time. And as you know, we don't have middle school sports in Albemarle County. Parson Rec helps with that and does some programs, but baseball and softball is not something we currently have at the middle school level. That's something we've been grateful to be part of and help start, as you see with the ad here. We currently have registrations open for that. These are just, as we get further along, if you can go to the transportation services. Well, yes, it listed.
Yep.
So just getting further into the floor plan and the list of programs and services, all this information you can find on our website. For the sake of time tonight, I'm not going to go through every single one, but you can get an idea that our facility is all about academics and education. And it's not just about the youth. We've heard that a lot from the community so far, just the, I guess a false understanding that this might be just for the youth. It's programs and services for everyone in the community. It's all about creating a true community hub for our community and again, addressing some of those lack of resources that we have for both athletics and education. So we feel like this can truly be a future community hub, not only for Crozet, but for all of Western Albemarle. And everything we do is about family, community, sports, but with an academics first approach, primarily with our youth programming. So keep in mind when you go and you look at these programs and services, when we designed the facility, everything with the design, the key focus was for it to be as multifunctional as possible. So a very flexible space. Because again, going back to the ensuring that we're going to meet not only current needs, but future needs, obviously our current needs are going to change, right? So it was important for us to design a space and a floor plan that was flexible so that what space we use for, say, baseball and softball on one day of the week, we're able to retract those cages and we can use that space for another sport that uses turf, for instance. The majority of the footprint of the facility is really covered field space. Okay, so while it is a 60,000 square foot footprint with approximately 26,000 upstairs, the majority of the footprint is the turf field space and the multi-purpose hardcourt space. And again, that's going back to that research we did and establishing meeting with leaders of the athletic community and trying to best establish exactly how much space we feel like we need for our programming. And that's also to support, the space is also going to be used and rented by youth organizations like VABA and SACA and the lacrosse community, and field hockey community, baseball and softball. So this, while it is a community-centered approach, it's also going to help support a lot of those existing youth sports organizations that right now, especially VABA, that are having a tough time finding enough gym space. They rent approximately 98% of Albemarle County gym space currently. So, and that's just one example. So this is, again, something that we put a lot of time and effort into. And we just encourage you to visit the project landing page and go through and read more about it. And, you know, we are still, as we navigate the county approval process, this is simply at a concept level. So we're still taking input from the community on the design of the facility, what programs and services are included. So if you unfortunately weren't able to participate in the survey, we encourage you to email us as well. And you can send us a message through our website. And if you have a particular need or interest in the community that we might could, help be a solution for, then obviously we welcome your feedback.
The second level.
Okay. Yeah, and on the second level, for the second level, outside of the turf space and the multi-purpose hardcourt space taking up the majority of the footprint, the other spaces it's heavy on academic classrooms because again, our approach is trying to serve, and this is something we've already discussed with Albemarle County Public Schools, trying to serve as an extension of their services and help be a solution for the current issues that we have with schools meeting or exceeding building capacity at this time. So yeah, I think that's it.
Back up a few slides here. Okay. I wanted to introduce myself again. I'm Valerie Long. I am a member of the CCAC and I do live in Old Trail like I was saying, but I'm also a local real estate and land use attorney with a firm here in town. And as part of that work, I occasionally have the privilege of working with clients like Justin and his organization to help them understand the local land use and zoning process, navigate the Crozet master plan, figure out how to look for sites where their facilities could be accommodated, and also help them through this process and the special use permit process or rezoning process. So just thought I'd explain that. And I wanted to also mention a few other folks from our team who are here tonight. Justin mentioned Andy Huffmeyer, who's one of his partners in the entity, the foundation. And also David Brockman is here, who many of you know. He is the development manager for Old Trail. And he's obviously been working very closely with Justin and Andy over the past 3 months to figure out find a location that worked right for the facility in Old Trail. And then we also have Bill Wench, who is a local traffic engineer with a firm called EPR. And his firm prepared a traffic, essentially it's not a full-on traffic study, but it's a trip generation analysis and memorandum that we shared with the county and is also listed, you can find it on the project website that Justin mentioned. And I'm going to be talking more about that because I know that's a big issue of interest for most of you, if not all of you. So I wanted to start by providing a little background on Old Trail for those of you who may not know as much about it. I know many of you do, and you've been attending a lot of the neighborhood meetings in Old Trail over the years, or just having been around and living and participating in things like the Crozet Master Plan in Crozet over the years. Old Trail was first zoned neighborhood model zoning district back in 2005. I had the privilege of being able to help the original developers of that project with the rezoning back then, so I loved it so much that I ended up moving out here myself. And this is a map showing the rezoned portion of Old Trail, and just for clarification, there are portions of Old Trail that are not technically part of the rezoning. They were already zoned to accommodate the type of residential homes that are there now. And so those areas are Lower Ballard, Upper Ballard, and Creekside. Those did not require rezoning by the county. When Megan mentioned earlier, sometimes the zoning matches the comprehensive plan and sometimes it doesn't. Those 3 sections of the neighborhood already matched the comprehensive plan at the time, so they didn't have to be rezoned. But the portions, the rest of Old Trail Village, did need to be rezoned. And I don't know how much of this you can see, but it's sort of, for those of you who know, it's the East Village, the West Village, the area around the pool, the village center, and then out towards the golf course, but not technically including the golf course because that's actually in the area. But this is a map that's been around for a while. And just to orient you, Block 19 is here, and there's Henley and Brownsville, and then Route 250 is here. And this is Old Trail Drive, so if that helps you. So when Old Trail was rezoned in 2005 to the Neighborhood Model Zoning District, that's a zoning district in the county that's intended to facilitate mixed-use development. So a mixture of residential, retail, and all sorts of other commercial uses. So Old Trail Village has its own sort of mini zoning ordinance called a Code of Development that's very specific. It was written for Old Trail, and the zoned area was broken up into what we call blocks, just for identification purposes. And there's, as part of the Code of Development, there is a list, a chart, that lists what uses are allowed in each of the blocks. And I think there's about 34 different blocks. And originally, Block 19, where Crozet Sports is proposing to locate, was not envisioned for any type of use other than residential use. And again, the idea was concentrate some of the development in the middle and fan out to the edges and get less dense there. When Dave took over, and I think the original developers were never quite as excited about that, but that's what the master plan calls for, and that's what the current Code of Development for Old Trail calls for. But when Justin was looking for a location for this facility, he started looking with Dave in some of the blocks in the Old Trail Village, because this type of use is already allowed in what we call blocks 1 through 7. So that's, for instance, where Grit is, and ACAC, where the new building is, right kind of behind the pool. That's a mixed-use building with apartments, where the apartments are located that are under construction now. That sort of is the heart of the village center, and this facility is allowed in those blocks. So originally they thought about, well, maybe we should locate it there, but for various reasons, particularly I think the location adjacent to Henley Middle School and so close to Western, the idea, because of the nature of this use being so focused on not only athletics but also education and academics, that the location adjacent to the school campuses was really a perfect fit to blend and match those uses together. And Justin could probably talk more about his vision for how the schools could use this facility, and the students can walk from Henley and from Western and be very close by and really take advantage of the programs and services that are planned here. So I have two other maps, and I should have done this first, to circle where Block 19 was on that map to orient you. This is just another version of maps that are of Old Trail that have been on the Old Trail website, and probably many of you saw, those of you who live in Old Trail, when you were perhaps looking for homes in the neighborhood, showing where Block 19 is, because that was sort of a future development area and there wasn't any plan for it at the time. You know, there's nothing shown there on the map of what was planned. It was just labeled Block 19.
Valerie, can I just jump in?
Sure.
What is, well, I guess maybe the next slide is so 24, 33, and 34, like across the street.
Mm-hmm.
What is the plan for that block?
There's no plan right now. That has the same designation in the Old Trail Code of Development for low density residential, the pale yellow color, but there's no plans for that right now. So it's, and Dave Brockman could speak to that, but he just, I think, haven't gotten to that block yet. Is that right, Dave? Yeah.
busy.
So, yeah. So they're working their way. The section here is the one that's under construction now, Block 32. So there's, I think, what did you say, Dave, 100 lots in that section. So that's obviously just gotten started. They're doing the site work, and there's 2 or 3 houses under construction there. So, and then there's a few other blocks in other areas, I think, that are probably would come up before those blocks come up. These are slides you already saw with the list of uses, which I realize many of you can't see, but again, please go to the Crozet Sports website and you can see all of these images in detail, and it'll be more helpful to you. This is just the first page of the zoning, part of the zoning documents that govern and regulate how Old Trail Village is developed. As part of the original rezoning back in 2005, the county requires you to provide and prepare what's called an application plan, which functions, once it's approved, it functions like a master plan. And in Old Trail, you have the combination of the code of development, which is the mini zoning ordinance, working together with the master plan. Together, those two things regulate how the neighborhood is developed and what can be built where, and where the roads have to be, and where sidewalks have to be, where trails, where open space is located, where streams are preserved. And so as part of this application, because Block 19 doesn't currently allow a facility like Crozet Sports, we have to amend the Old Trail zoning documents to request that change. So we've submitted an amendment to the Old Trail master plan or application plan to allow this use in Block 19. And we submitted an amendment to the Old Trail Code of Development to allow the use in that area. And so you'll see this map here in the corner. My next slide is an enlarged version of that map, just again to orient you. So this is rotated a little bit. This is Route 250 here, where's Block 19. And as I mentioned earlier, a facility like this is already permitted in blocks 1 through 7 in the village center. And again, the decision was made that none of those blocks was really the right fit for a facility like this. Among other things, you would lose the direct and adjacent connection with Henley Middle School and the proximity to Western and Brownsville that Justin really thought was an important component for the success of the facility. So that's when he and David realized that Block 19 really made was a much better fit and that we would move forward with that location. Again, as part of the zoning application amendment, the county requires you to submit an application plan showing generally how you would develop that particular parcel. This may not make much sense to you all because it's kind of just blocks and rectangles, but we generally show the location of where the building would be in the top corner, the building envelope, and then in front the parking envelope where the parking lot will generally be located. And of course the open space there, that's a future multi-purpose field of some sort or just general open space. You can also see the driveway, the entrance to the facility is located off of Old Trail Drive, not off of Route 250. And then as Megan indicated, the Crozet master plan expressly calls for a pedestrian or vehicular connection from Block 19 to Henley Middle School. And so we have shown that on our proposed plan as a proposed pedestrian and vehicular connection to Henley Middle School. We don't have the ability to build that without the county school division's support and permission, essentially. Let me go to the next slide and then I'll talk more about that potential connection. This is a conceptual plan of how the prior plan is just an application plan, kind of a block or bubble plan, some people call it. This is a conceptual plan of how it might actually, with a little bit more detail, be built. And so again, you see the outdoor field would need to be a little bit of grading there to address the change in grade. You can see the driveway coming off of Old Trail Drive, the parking lot, and then the building above. And then you can see that at the top of the screen, a potential connection to Henley Middle School. One other issue I wanted to touch on was, as I think Megan indicated, the Crozet Master Plan very clearly spells out a requirement or recommendation that a 150-foot deep vegetated buffer be maintained along the front of the property between Route 250 and basically the front of Block 19. And so I wanted to make sure everybody, it's not easy to see, but this whole area here is 150 feet back from Route 250. So we're not proposing to make any changes or put any development or clear any of those trees. We'll maintain that buffer as part of this project. Another buffer requirement that's shown on the master plan is that there be a vegetated buffer maintained between Henley and any development on Block 19. So other than a proposed pedestrian or vehicular connection, that buffer would be maintained as well as part of the project. So again, as the master plan says, there's not to be any, or it's recommended that there not be any commercial development on Route 250. The goal being to preserve the rural character of Crozet. And then there's language in the Old Trail Code of Development that talks about the importance of protecting the view sheds from Route 250. So from the very beginning, when Justin and Dave identified this location, we knew from the beginning, well, it's going to be really important that you not put your building right on 250. You won't be able to access, have direct access from 250. And you're going to have to maintain a 150-foot buffer along the whole edge of that parcel. Thankfully, it's 9.5 acres, so there was enough land to work with there. And so, we think we're following the master plan really to the T. The project is not a commercial development right on 250. It's one sort of, it's a commercial development in some respects. It's more an athletic facility, an academic facility. Call it commercial. It's not like it's a retail store or a strip shopping center or those types of uses. It's, we think, much more similar to the types of uses you see at Henley and Western and Brownsville. You have essentially indoor athletic facilities like they have at Henley. You have some indoor classroom space and some related facilities like that. So it's not an exact fit, but that was a large draw for this location, was the symbiotic relationship between those two areas. We did meet just earlier this week with representatives of the school division, including some of you on the CCAC may remember when Rosalind Schmidt was here 3-4 months ago, I think, talking about school enrollment. She's the chief operating officer for the school division. We met with her and also the person who's head of transportation for the schools, and also the person who's head of facilities. And so they are, were receptive to the project here. They agreed that there were a lot of good benefits and good relationship potential in terms of sharing space. We think it could also be helpful to share parking spaces with the schools. For those of you with children at Henley or Brownsville, and you've been there on back to school night or graduation, Henley's moving up ceremony, Brownsville's moving up ceremony. It's pretty crazy in that parking lot, and we thought it would be a good opportunity, if the school's interested, to be able to use some of the Crozet Sports parking lots on occasion if necessary. Likewise, they expressed interest in perhaps being able to use some of the indoor turf field space and basketball court space on certain days of the week when the Henley gym is packed to the gills with middle school students. And so those are the types of symbiotic programming opportunities that they're already starting to talk about. They do definitely support a pedestrian connection between Crozet Sports and Henley. They're going to evaluate whether they're comfortable having a vehicular connection there or not. They have concerns, as we can all imagine, about safety and security, having a single point of contact and ensuring they can do everything they can to ensure the safety of their students, also to not create any interference with the bus circulation and the parent pickup and drop off times, and obviously safety of the students. So we're talking about perhaps having some controlled access for vehicles, certainly an emergency access. So it's a second point of ingress and egress during emergency situations, whether it's for Crozet Sports, if there's an accident on Old Trail Drive and an ambulance needs to get to Crozet Sports, or vice versa, if there's an accident on 250 in front of Henley in Brownsville and an ambulance needs to get into the back of Henley, say to the gym, they could use an emergency access route. They could put up bollards in between so that only emergency vehicles would be able to use that, unless it's a time when, say, the school was opening it up for overflow parking during one of those high volume back to school nights. One of the things that Justin and his team have done is, again, because they knew that everybody here would be very interested in how the building would look from Route 250, from Old Trail Drive, from Old Trail residences, and from Henley and from other places. He went ahead, and even though it's not really a requirement at this point, he's gone ahead and worked with a local architecture firm to come up with some conceptual designs for what the building would look like and how it would fit onto the site. There is a change in grade down the hill, moving away from Route 250. So in working with Dave Brockman, they were able to figure out a good location where they could have a facility of this size and still have it really kind of tuck into the ground and not, stick up too far above Route 250 and be to visible. So these are all computer-generated renderings by the local architecture firm Design Develop. And I'll help orient you, although most of you probably can tell what you're looking at. This is the intersection of Old Trail Drive and Route 250. This is if you were leaving Western, and obviously that's block 19. You can see the 150-foot vegetated buffer here, a little bit of the buffer in the back. That didn't show up quite as well on the renderings. And then Henley and Brownsville are back here because of the graphics. They kind of look like flat pancake buildings. But you can see how it would relate to that intersection, how far back it is from Route 250. So it's really not on 250. It's very much fronting on Old Trail Drive and accessed from Old Trail Drive. This is an overhead view that's Old Trail Drive in the foreground. You can see the driveway coming in and how it curves around a little bit to take advantage of the change in the grade. This is the opposite direction, looking up towards the 250 intersection. And you can see the maintenance of the buffer here, and then also in the back, and how that building would relate. And again, those are conceptual designs, definitely not final, but it gives you an idea of how you could have a building of this size in this particular location and how it would relate to Old Trail Drive, 250, and the rest of the neighborhood, and also just Crozet as a whole. The other thing I'll mention is we very intentionally located the building in this part of the parcel for two reasons. One, because of the change in grade, they could kind of tuck the building in a little bit better and not have it be too high in elevation relative to Old Trail Drive and Route 250. But also it provided the opportunity to maintain vegetated buffer along Old Trail Drive as well. Obviously, if you drive by there now, it's pretty vegetated. There's a lot of new infrastructure that's been put in place with the sidewalk, new street trees, new lamp posts, and new entrance signage and plantings that really frame that entrance very nicely. And the goal is to preserve as much of that as possible and really only disturb what's necessary in order to build the building and cut the driveway in. This is an overhead view, sort of rotated. You see the school, Henley, here in the foreground. And so you can see how the building is set back closer to Henley. And when we met with the school folks yesterday, that was one of the things they really liked, was that the building was closer to Henley so that it was a more convenient and safer walking path for the students that might go between, including the Brownsville students who might, Justin's talked about, one of the ideas he has is he became aware pretty quickly about the shortage of space and capacity at the Brownsville aftercare program and how that program fills up almost instantly, and I think at Crozet Elementary as well. And so he recognized again that there's a need for additional space. I think the school would happily accommodate more children if they had the space for it. And so Justin would have the space in his project. So one of his ideas is being able to have essentially another after-school program that his team could operate, which would involve one of his staff members walking over to Brownsville, walking those students over to the school, or whatever arrangement they work out with the school. So obviously having that building closer to Henley and Brownsville just helps make that even safer and a shorter route.
Valerie, I just want to make sure you leave time for
Yes, okay, I'll go. I think we're just about finished. I'll go through these pretty quickly just to give you some more ideas of what the building would look like, how it relates to the various locations. That's a view of the driveway coming off of Route 250. And this is driving up Old Trail Drive, so you can see how the vegetation is maintained along Old Trail Drive, the building behind it. And then I'll quickly touch on traffic. I know you all have a lot of questions. Again, we did, at the county's request, we had our traffic engineers prepare a trip generation study. And the idea was you look at, right now, block 19, under the current zoning for Old Trail, it would allow up to 90 residential dwelling units. Those could be townhouses, attached homes, not townhomes, but they could be attached villas, like there are many of in Old Trail, or single-family detached homes. And so our traffic engineers studied and estimated how many trips would occur on a daily basis on average from having 90 homes on Block 19, and then also compared it to how many trips would Crozet Sports Facility generate by comparison. And there's a lot of data on this chart, and I know you probably can't read it. The whole memo is available on the Crozet Sports webpage. Feel free to take a look at it. The sort of overall comparison of average daily trips was actually, to our pleasant surprise, was actually lower than what would be generated by 90 residential homes in that block. For 90 homes, it's estimated that it would generate 820 vehicle trips per day. And I will tell you, by the way, a trip is one, if you leave your house and you go to the grocery store, that's a trip. You come home from the grocery store, that's a trip. We all might think of that as one trip, but a traffic study thinks of that as 2 trips. And then by comparison, I had it backwards, pardon me. The proposed project, Crozet Sports, 820 trips estimated. By comparison, Block 19 with the current zoning of 90 residential dwelling units is 944 daily trips estimated on average. The county also requires us to look at, okay, that's the daily total trips. What about during the times when it really matters? The morning rush hour, the afternoon rush hour. In traffic study vernacular, they use the term the AM peak period, which just means morning rush hour. We all, if you live in the area, if you drive down Old Trail Drive, anytime between about 7:30 and 9:05, it gets pretty congested. Although I don't know if those of you who live there have noticed, but I really noticed what an improvement has taken place just over the past few months. Dave worked very closely with VDOT representatives and maybe others too. I'm not sure if the school transportation folks were involved, but the school folks are very focused on this because they want to make sure their students and their staff are getting to school on time. And that's not always happening, or wasn't happening in the mornings in particular because of the congestion at this intersection. So the first thing they did was pretty effective, but just by changing the sequencings and when the light shifted from yellow to red and arrows and things like that, they timed them better so that traffic is flowing much better now than it used to be. We know there's still challenges there. So we also broke out the trips that compared the morning trips estimated for Crozet Sports against the morning trips estimated for 90 residential units during that morning rush hour period. And for Crozet Sports, it was estimated to be 46 trips in the morning. By comparison, the 90 residential units that could be built by right is estimated to generate 69 trips in the morning. So that was really good news, that it's actually would be fewer trips than are there now than could be allowed. And then also we looked at the afternoon peak. Crozet Sports would generate 228 trips on estimate. 90 residential units in the afternoon generated fewer trips though, it was 92. So we asked them, the traffic engineers, to look at that again, and they broke it down. The afternoon peak period is a 2-hour peak from 4 o'clock to 6 o'clock. Because if you know, there's kind of a little mini rush hour from 4 to 4:20, 4:30 when school's let out. And then there's kind of a second rush hour around 5:30 to 6, 5 to 6 roughly, when commuters are coming home. So we asked them to break down the 228 trips that are estimated to generate from Crozet Sports in the afternoon peak period. And the good news is that it was 147 of them are estimated to occur after 5:30. So well after the school's mini rush hour from 4 to 4:30. So that's because those trips are going to be parents picking kids up, whether it's the after-school program, basketball practice, batting cage camps, any of the other programming that might take place. So, and when we met with the school folks yesterday, what they shared with us was that they're not as concerned with the afternoon rush hour from their perspective, which granted may be different from everybody in the community's perspective. They're mostly focused on the morning rush hour, again, so they can get their students and staff to school on time. That was everything I have. I'm happy to answer questions, and I'll go ahead and start. I do want to mention we do have a second project though, so Allie, feel free to cut me off, or Andrew.
Yeah, so just real quick for the Q&A, we took a little longer than the presentation we planned for. So we'll probably have about 20 minutes, I think, before we need to move to our next item, so we have enough time for the other community meeting. If you have if you want to voice your agreement with one of the prior speakers, please just raise your hand. We'll make a note if you agree with that statement. Please be brief. Please, if someone else has made a point, the same point, just consider if you need to let someone else speak. Just keep things brief. Raise your hand if you agree with someone.
I've got concern about the noise. I live in one of the houses that's going to be the closest to your facility, with just a few trees between us. And right now, if there's activities going on in the high school, we hear inside of our house with the windows closed and the door closed. This is going to be about 100 feet from our house. And I think not only the traffic's a problem, the noise is a problem. I don't think you've done a noise study. But I want to tell you my plan. If this is approved, my plan is to buy a directional microphone and a recording decibel meter. And every time the noise exceeds the county ordinance, I'm going to be calling the police. Because there's enough problems with noise in our area as it is, football games and everything else. So I think the idea of a sports facility is fine. It's the wrong place for it. When most of us bought an old trail that was supposed to be residents, wasn't supposed to be more traffic, wasn't supposed to be more noise and commotion.
Can we see a map? Can you just put a map back up and maybe you could point out where you live?
Yeah, I'll show you exactly where I live. You bring that up. It's the first street on the other side of the trees on Rail Cross.
Sorry. Jenny, go ahead.
Valerie, I was wondering, in the packet that I have, it talks about the amendment to the code of development under zoning. It says land use is allowed. It's to permit indoor athletic facilities, commercial, recreational facilities, and then it says in community centers. I wanted clarification on what community centers mean. I want to know if the only uses that can occur are the indoor athletic facility and commercial recreation facility. Are you like proffering away other uses, or when you say and community centers, could there be an opportunity in the future for this to turn into something that's more like the commercial center that's down further?
So a community center is actually a defined term in the county zoning ordinance. I have to pull it to tell you exactly what it is, but what I did was, this is clearly sort of an indoor athletic facility and it's a commercial recreational facility, both of which were allowed already. And then there was a use that's also allowed in Old Trail, a community center.
Like a gathering spot.
Exactly.
I just wanted to make sure it wasn't like a planning term that would allow for a slew of uses other than that which we were seeing here.
No, you're correct. It would not allow any other commercial or retail uses, no shops, no offices, no gas stations, anything like that. It's just would be those uses that are allowed there. And so because of the nature of this facility, it is an indoor athletic facility, but because this additional component of sort of some educational programming, that's similar to what happens at community centers, the way that's defined. And so we thought it was appropriate to kind of include all three of those uses, which are defined in the ordinance, so that no one would question, well, is an academic program allowed in an indoor athletic facility? So that was the goal. But yeah, none of the other retail uses that are also allowed in other parts of Old Trail, like restaurants and shops and offices, those would not be allowed under this proposal. Thank you. I appreciate you clarifying that. Yes, ma'am.
Are there accessory selling socks or shin guards or something like that, or is this strictly no camp store or equipment stuff for the school?
Honestly, I hadn't thought about that, Ann, but I imagine as part of an indoor athletic facility, just like at ACAC, I think you could probably buy a pair of athletic mouth guard if you forget yours. Something very small. It would probably be considered a permitted accessory use, but you certainly couldn't open a Dick's Sporting Goods there or anything of the like. So.
Coffee machine and all that.
Yes, good example. Yes, thank you. Yes.
What's the cost of membership to this, and how many members do you expect to have in it, and are you making any kind of arrangements for low-income people?
I'll let Justin, do you want to answer? Or
Yeah, sure.
Cognizant of poor Justin his scratchy throat, so talk as much as you can.
Sure, so it will be a membership-based model with opportunities to participate in other fee-based programming, such as instructional clinics or camps for kids, or adult learning academy for our adults, or adult sports leagues for our adults. So it will be membership-based model. One thing I failed to mention earlier that I think Valerie did briefly mention is, we recently transitioned to the Crozet Sports Community Foundation. So we're a nonprofit organization now, and that's how we'll run the operations with the future indoor facility. So to answer your questions about lower income-based pricing, that sort of thing, yes, we will. We'll also be providing scholarships and financial assistance to families that otherwise wouldn't, may not be able to access our programming. Because we really, our goal is for this to be, we don't want there to be any barriers to entry for this type of facility. Did that answer your question? Yeah. Okay, thanks.
My comments aren't, I'm not speaking against this project, but I just want to point out that the architectural renderings and drawings show the building looking very beautiful in what appears to be a rural setting. It might not look as pretty if it also included the buildings of Henley and the elementary school behind that. Then it's just another one of adding to more big buildings along that area. Just as we analyze it and think about it, I didn't want to lose perspective of the fact that that drawing might look prettier than it would be if it had those schools that back there behind it contributing to the parking lots and the overall building of the area.
Yeah. No, you're right. Those buildings in the background would help add better context to it, show it's not kind of standing there all by itself,
Yeah.
that it's surrounded by those similar uses. Yeah. Yes, sir.
On the topic of safety and traffic, when you watch the kids cross that intersection with the crossing guard part of the day and not at some other times, and hearing, a lot of what else is yet to be built in Old Trail, plus all the through traffic that you mentioned last week, it may be something to consider to put a pedestrian bridge over 250 in order to separate the kids, get them off the ground, in the air, give the cars more time to make turns, and at some point probably grow the turn pockets, the right-hand turn lanes and so forth. But the bridge is cheaper than building lanes.
Yes.
Yeah, it would be a great idea, and we'll certainly consider it and pass it on. Unfortunately, that's sort of a VDOT decision because it's their road, and I know there's challenges when you have pedestrian bridges. They have to be tall enough that tractor trailers can go underneath them, and I know the county's been looking into that for a similar bridge in Cantops. But it certainly is better from a pedestrian connection. It's just unfortunately not something that we have the ability to do. But I know that a lot of folks are looking at the traffic issues at that intersection, not only the school division, but also the county board of supervisors. My understanding is there's going to be maybe a comprehensive traffic study as part of the Crozet master plan update. So there's going to be a lot of focus on traffic generally at that intersection as well, I think, as all of Crozet, or at least the development area. So, yes, John.
Do you envision the need for a traffic light at the entrance of the sports facility?
We don't.
The other thing that immediately I could imagine people would love using Crozet Sports as an entry into Henley. How would you guys deal with that? Would you be supportive of that, or would you try to block it off?
Well, Sean, I can answer if it helps. I thought it would be something that the schools would want, frankly, because to help relieve congestion at the 250 intersection, they actually said they would not support that because of their security and safety issues, that they want to maintain a single point of entrance or access, which other than for emergency. So they said at least for now, they're saying that's not something they would support.
So during drop-off and pickup, somehow that would be blocked?
Right, sure, you talked about that.
Yeah, they'd have bollards put up or something so people could walk back and forth.
So you could pull in to Crozet Sports, drop your kid off, say
Well,
walk.
Yeah, they have to walk across.
I guess so, kind of like happens already in Old Trail a little bit.
Not that anyone should do that.
And certainly that's possible. Certainly students could walk, obviously, through through Crozet Sports, and then make the connection on foot to Henley and Brownsville as well. Yes.
I'm wondering what the overlap is between what Crozet Sports will do and the teams that are on the high school and middle schools. Are the leagues that are going to be developed by Crozet Sports, will they be school leagues, or will they be intramural, or will there be something of both?
I'm going to let Justin answer
Yeah,
that.
so we do plan on having primarily adult sports leagues. Most likely there will not
Did you
be.
say intramural?
What's that?
Adult.
Yeah, adult sports leagues. There definitely will be adult sports leagues. Youth sports leagues, there may be some, but really our goal is to support those youth sports organizations that already have existing youth sports leagues, but they just don't have enough indoor space. So they would be then leasing space from this facility for their programs.
I see.
So.
Anybody else? Yeah.
I'm having trouble wrapping my head around 10 trips per household per day. Maybe we were different, but I have a hard time with that.
I'm gonna, we had a similar question when we had the Old Trail neighbors there, and it's a fair comment. I'm gonna ask our professional traffic engineer to answer that rather than me try to. So again, this is Bill Wench. He is with EPR, which is, I'm gonna just disconnect this now, I think.
Yeah, good evening. It's a good question. I actually get that a lot. So when we look at trip generation, there's a manual we go by that's put out by the Institute of Transportation Engineers. And this manual is a compilation of data for different types of uses, everything from grocery stores to gas stations to houses to condos, townhouses. Two very thick books. And they publish it every couple of years. We have to buy a new one every couple of years. Costs a ton of money. But and within those books, what they have are scattergrams. And I just, you can't see this, but I hand it to you as I'm walking out the door. It's a scattergram graph where they've done surveys of different housing developments, testing and observing numbers of trips per house. This is all graphed out. So this is where we get our data. And this is used industry-wide across the country. And it's standard data. So when we do studies, it might be a study for VDOT, or counties, or whatever, looking at new developments or various types of studies. It's the standard industry data that we use. So there's 10 trips in a day is what they figure. And as Valerie explained earlier, that's 5 times out and back.
Yeah, it seems a lot.
So if you've got a house, and maybe, I try to rationalize this out myself. So if you have a house with 2.2 kids and a couple, right? The couple both go to work out and back. So it's 4 trips.
Yep.
They're taking the kids out, dropping them off. You may have some deliveries during the day. Could even be the mailman showing up
That's
with
8.
the Amazon truck. But the rate, actually, if you get a range of rates, and it ranges from 5 to 20. 5 to 20, but the average number for this type of use is 10 trips a day, so that's what we use. That's kind of a long explanation.
Excuse me, you didn't answer my question about if you've done a noise study. Our community just went through Yancey Mill hum for over a year, where everybody was being disturbed. Have you done a noise study on what this facility will cause?
We have not done a noise study. Obviously, as I know you know, there is a noise ordinance in the county that is pretty strictly enforced. It has strict regulations on the noise that can be emitted. Most of the uses at this facility will be indoors, so we don't anticipate a problem. We can certainly take a look at it. There is a future outdoor space that's proposed for recreational use. It's not a definite that will be built because Justin needs to make sure his budget works for that. But certainly those are things we'll be taking a look at. I don't know how recreational uses outside are regulated under the noise ordinance. I'd have to look at that and see. But certainly from uses inside the building, I don't know that would be as much of a risk. But certainly
Well, if you've
they'll
lived,
be obligated
if
to
you've
comply
lived near, next to an athletic facility, there's a lot of noise that comes out because the building echoes.
Okay.
And I think that before the county decides to give you a waiver for this, you need to do a serious noise study how it's going to affect the residents of Old Trail as well as the other communities around.
Okay. Thank you for that feedback.
Just 3 quick questions. Is the buffer going to be planted, or are you going to use what's there now? Is there any government funding involved with this, or is it strictly a private enterprise? And have you looked at what the impact would be on Crozet Park? For example, would Peachtree Baseball be moving over to this facility?
Okay, I can answer most of that. The buffer, the master plan says it should be maintained. It may, so that's the bare minimum, is you gotta leave it alone, you can't cut down. There are some areas where it says if it's not of a certain standard, you need to supplement it. So it may be that it's probably likely on the side adjacent to Henley, it's not very robust on that side, so there probably would need to be some additional plantings there. But for the most part, the 150-foot buffer back from 250 is pretty robust. So there may, if there's some areas there where it needs a little attention, but I think the idea is you leave it alone and just maintain it.
Yeah.
The second question about whether any government funding, no. None's proposed. And then with regard to the impact on Crozet Park, I'd like Justin to answer that question because he's on the Peachtree board and I think probably involved with the park and spends a lot of time there.
All right, so I'm on the Peachtree board of directors. And like I had said before, we only plan on supporting existing local sports organizations. So obviously, we're not planning on having baseball fields or softball fields. We'll have spaces where those participants of our local Peachtree and baseball and softball league could use our space for training year-round. Absolutely. So again, we would just further support those existing leagues and organizations and just help them, further, reach their mission and serve the community as they're currently serving.
Yeah, and I don't know if you got into numbers. The membership fee, what would that be like? Any idea?
That's something that we have some numbers that we've based our financial projections off of. But again, because we are in the concept phase with this, and we've done some initial projections, but it's not something that's solidified enough that we can release pricing for programs to the community. But I will just reiterate that, like I answered the gentleman before, is with our community foundation, a nonprofit mission, our goal is to keep this very affordable for the community.
We're running out of time.
Yeah.
Can I, one more?
Hang on,
Just quick.
you had a question in the back. Did you?
I just wanted to add that I take a minimum, my house generates a minimum of 10 trips a day. A minimum.
My house takes a lot of.
And all of my friends and family that have similar house dynamics are at probably on
Yeah, with 3 kids and 2.
And it averages out, so you might have 15 trips a day, someone else might have 4, so that's how you end up with 10. Yes.
Can you just tell us what the procedures are moving forward? I'm just not.
Sure. Megan may want to answer, but I can give you the short answer. There's going to be 2 public hearings required. The first is the Planning Commission. That date has not been set yet, maybe in the next 2-3 months, roughly. So that's a public hearing. Jenny Moore is the local representative on the Planning Commission, so it's good she's here. And then roughly a month or 2 later, it would go before the Board of Supervisors. The Planning Commission makes a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors, but it's ultimately Anne and her colleagues who make the final decision. So
I'll just add that we completed 1 review, staff has completed 1 review, and those comments are available online if anybody wants those. So right now the application is in the applicant's hands to revise their application based on those comments.
Yeah, so we take those comments, and we've already had a meeting with the staff and with the school, like I said, and working with our traffic engineers to address some of the comments that we got back on all those issues and the comments we've heard here tonight. We're going to be updating all of our application materials and resubmitting them to the staff for a second round of review.
Thank you.
Yeah. And hopefully
I
after
need to
that,
let Chris go, so maybe you can at least get started.
Sure.
Getting ready while we take Frank's question. Okay, go ahead.
I don't know if you're all aware of the fact that, is anybody here from VDOT up there?
Yeah.
They're going to be reducing, taking the bridge down on 240, which is part of Crozet Avenue, if you're aware of that, within the next 2 years. And Old Trail Drive is then going to be a thoroughfare for all of the traffic that can't go down 240 for approximately 3 to 6 months, I think it's called. They're either going to block the road completely, or they're gonna make it a one-way with the stop and go type of thing. And I was wondering if you've taken this into consideration, and no one's ever mentioned, I want to make sure everybody's aware of that, and by the fact that there's a possibility that you might want to put this project off until that bridge is built. I'm not sure how much traffic is going to be going through Old Trail, but it's going to be quite a bit more than it is now. Because all that traffic that goes up to 40 is going to be blocked either 100% or one way, stop and go type of thing. And that's going to really be causing a problem on that corner. Yes, thank you.
All right, I think a lot of people came from Crozet Sports, but maybe that's not on the next one, so. Go ahead.
All right, good evening, everyone. My name is Cameron Langell. I'm a senior planner with the Albemarle County Department of Community Development, and I'm the lead staff member handling the review of ZMA 2019-16, which is Byrd Road. This is a proposed rezoning that's along the west side of Orchard Drive, just kind of south of where Orchard Acres is located. According to that sign on the wall, I think we can get here by 8:45, I believe. So I'm going to be pretty brief, just talk about what the existing zoning is, and then what the comp plan says for this property. And then I'll turn it over to Chris, and he can present some of the specifics about what they're looking at doing here.
Can you speak a little louder, please?
Yeah.
The old folks.
So on these two maps, I apologize, we did expect to have a bigger screen. I know you can't really see too well, but the map on your left is the existing zoning districts that apply to the property, and the map on the right is the future land use plan and the Crozet master plan. So this property is currently zoned R2 residential, which means it can do 2 dwelling units per acre. It measures 1.24 acres, so they can only do 2 dwelling units. It's currently undeveloped. And they could do single-family detached. They could also get up to 3 dwelling units per acre if they do what we call a cluster development, which is a different kind of subdivision. There's some certain standards they have to meet, like setting aside minimum amounts of open space and things like that. So Bamboo Grove is proposing to rezone the properties to R4, which is 4 dwelling units per acre. And you can go up to 6 dwelling units per acre if you do a cluster development. The comprehensive plan, the Crozet master plan, recommend neighborhood density residential for this property, which is potential uses at densities between 3 and 6 units per acre. And so looking at this map here, you'll also notice that there's this green area, and that's green space. The reason that's there is there's a water protection ordinance stream buffer on this property. So that portion of it should be left undeveloped, and the rest could be the residential units. So Chris will get into more detail. This is what they've submitted to us for their site layout. And you can see they're looking at doing 6 dwelling units. They would be detached, single family. There would be a new road coming off of Orchard Drive that would kind of provide the travel way to get into these properties. Basically, the process so far, we've done 1 review on this application, and comments were sent to the applicant on January 3rd, excuse me. So far, they have not requested to schedule a public hearing with the Planning Commission. I believe they're intending to resubmit to address some of the staff comments that we had on that first review. So moving forward, you can contact me if you have any input that you'd like to share. You can send me an email. My email address is blangell@albemarle.org, not C. Everyone makes that mistake sometimes, so just be aware of that. And with that, I'll be able to answer your questions about the process, but I'll let Chris and Nicole talk about what they're looking to do.
All right. Okay, good. All right, thank you everyone for coming. Thank you everyone for staying, if you weren't thinking of staying. I feel a little weird going after a big project, because I'm talking about such a tiny, tiny, tiny little project. And I also want to, and with that, I really want to talk about the neighborhoods that are right around the downtown area, because I think that it's very important for the future of Crozet that well, I'll get to it later. Anyway, so I am Christopher Fuller. I work at Stengel Engineering, which is just below you guys. It's over there. But right next to Crozet Running, we've been here for about 4 years, and I've been in the Charlottesville area for 12. And this is my 4th pocket neighborhood that I've tried to do. I was one of the designers on Eco Village Charlottesville, which is starting to happen now. And you may have yelled at me for my last 2 pocket neighborhoods in Crozet, or maybe you were happy about them. I don't know, but they for various reasons they kind of disappeared. So anyway, I'm kind of a nerd. I'm a designer. I'm not really a developer, but I have learned to be one by making lots and lots of mistakes. And I'm going to share some of those mistakes with you and share some of the things that I've found about mainly affordable housing. And it's a tricky little, it's tricky. Let's see what else. Oh yes, I own the property. I bought it because we moved our office here. I bought it a couple years ago and was going to build a house and sell the other lot. And it turned out, actually I'll go into that later, it turned out to be way more expensive than I wanted it to be. And I didn't feel like it helped the neighborhood at all. Anyways, I have 2 little girls who love to ride their bikes, and we come over to the park and ride around on the trail that goes around Collier's Crozet Park on the weekends, and then they walk to the ice cream shop. So we've been trying to get out here, and we live next to Armor High School in Charlottesville. And as far as the project team goes, Valerie Enterprises is the one who kind of talked me into doing this. Because I was about to give up. And Justin Shimp is a local engineer. You probably have seen his work. He's actually working with me on the Eco Village too. So there's some everybody knows each other around here. And Nicole, I'll let Nicole introduce herself.
Oh, sure. Okay, so I'm Nicole Scrow. I am a lawyer by training, but turned developer in late 2018. Gallifrey's our company, and yeah, we wound up talking about affordable housing and how to design a good neighborhood, and so that's how Bamboo Grove was born. So that's all I have, but I'm excited for this project, even though it is very simple.
So yeah, and part of the history is I was actually talking to Habitat after I got quotes from builders for $500,000 houses. I went and talked to Habitat, and Habitat that's where we kind of came up with the idea for the actual site design. But then they decided they didn't want to go through all of this for just 4 units or something like that. So they backed out, and anyway, you all, I don't know if everybody knows where it is exactly, but it's only 3 blocks down the road, and it is really a bamboo grove. It's just covered in bamboo. I think it's 3/4 of an acre of bamboo, which is a unique challenge I have learned, is trying to find out ways to not poison the ground and get rid of it. It's really hard. But so I think we're just going to dig big trenches around it so that it can't go any further from where it is. And then we'll leave it there for to play in, because my kids love that bamboo. During the winter time, I won't let them go in the summer because they'll be covered in ticks. So it's really close to everything. I know that I would walk everywhere. I would walk to work. I would walk to the grocery store. I would walk everywhere. I don't know if everybody in the neighborhood, in this little tiny neighborhood, would, but that's my vision for what I would want to live. I want to live in a town that has all of the small town charm right here that I can walk to, and that I think that's a huge advantage of Crozet, and I think we need to find a way to protect that, and I'll get more into that later too. So there's tons of stuff to walk to. More walking means less cars, and more lattes. Because, more ice cream. Yeah, we'll have to manage that. Yeah. So this is a map of the Crozet master plan of the trail system. And so currently, Pleasant Greens, I don't know how far Pleasant Green is in the whole approval stage, but this long trail is what will be part of Pleasant Greens development. And then, so this trail that's also shown here is kind of a guerrilla trail right now. I mean, guerrilla like, you know, people just doing it. People just walking back there. So there's a little trail by the river. Maybe it's a game trail. I'm not gonna say. But but we would want to dedicate that piece along the water to start as a trail that would lead from the sidewalk that we're putting in, you know, and going through and being part of the new greenway system that's kind of being pieced together as Crozet grows. And this is site design. So this is the part that I do all the time. I've done probably 30 different versions of this. So it's fairly simple. It's just the idea is to keep the cars from overrunning the whole place. And it's a little washed down here, but you can see the parking area is here, and then all the residences are kind of in a circle around. The idea is to when people park their cars, they walk through an area that is a common space, and you know, they might have an informal interaction with somebody. They may not. They, you know, get the mail in a central location. There might be bike storage there, but the idea is that you get to know who your neighbors are, and you know, you can have friendships with them. You cannot. It doesn't matter. But it's not like having garages that you just park in and you never see them again. The garage door goes up and you never see your neighbors. And so the idea is to kind of invert that. So it's pretty simple. It's not rocket science, but this is the way the neighborhoods have been designed for a long time. Before cars, there was no parking lots, so everybody walked. So this isn't new. It's just kind of being rediscovered. And they've done a lot of studies, and it does seem to be better for. It seems better for activity and better for social. So, you know, feeling better about how you feel in your community.
So the top of that is all the bamboo that's right there.
The bamboo. Oh yes, this is all the bamboo. Yes, this is all bamboo. The idea is I've been researching ways of containing it where it is, because getting rid of it would disturb the stream buffer to ways that I don't really think that anybody really wants to do. It's just too much to do. You have to, it would take years to get rid of it, and then if there's just too much runoff, just containing it, I think is the way to do it. So protecting the stream is definitely of great importance.
I just had a couple of questions about the buildings themselves. These are all single-family homes.
Yes.
What kind of square footprint do these have?
So currently they're on the smaller side. So these 3 units are about 915 square feet, and the 3 larger units are 1,700 square feet.
And
What was the larger ones?
2 stories. 1,700 square feet.
For the building, the footprint would be.
The footprint's half of that.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That's the gross square.
And the price range generally?
I'm going to get into that.
And my third question, slight comment, is that there is a community in the Crozet similar to this. You may be familiar with it, Emerson Commons. I didn't know if you've talked to them about it.
Yes, we were actually going to live there.
You were?
Yes. Yes. That's a long story. Yeah, is that all your questions? Sure. I'll get to, well, I might get to some of those. So, let's see. So the utilities are all on site already. They're running along, crisscrossing it. Actually, there's like crisscrossing it in every direction. So it's, this is the place to build things. And here's a rendering of the site plan. Well, it's just a rendering of the site. So you can kind of see the character of what we're kind of thinking of right now. And all this is subject to change. Obviously, we're just in rezoning. But
So it looks like each house can only have 1 car?
2. We actually have 13 spots for 6 weeks. So we have.
There are 2 garages. there are garages.
There's a garage here, so there's two for that unit, there's two for every unit, and there's three for this back one, yeah.
That's for the introverts.
Yes, this is the introvert house, actually, this is my house. I picked that one out. There's also a greenhouse on that one, because I also picked that one. So, yeah, the central green area, I actually want to take that big tree out of the center and put trees along the outskirts so you get a little green out of it. Little patio area next to the parking lot that's next to the bikes, next to the mail area. So, you know, if people are hanging out, you might hang out. If you don't feel like hanging out, you can just do this. Or get on your cell phone, you know, do the universal sign for I'm talking on the phone, even though your phone's off. But, you know, so, affordable housing. So, I have spent a long time trying to figure this out. And it turns out it's really hard. And it turns out the reason why it's really hard is hard-coded into the DNA of the county. And I'm sorry for picking on you. And I'm sorry for picking on any large projects too, because I'm going to do that too. But I'm not going to. It's not bad. It's just I'm just going to pick on for affordable housing. There's some definite barriers that we need to overcome. So we need to think about this when we're talking about the comprehensive plan, because neighborhoods, it's important for neighborhoods to have affordable housing. And I don't know, does anybody know how many affordable housing units were built last year in Crozet?
3.
3? I think it's 0. I think it's 0. But,
what's affordable? Is that in the high 300s, or is that?
So affordable, according to the county, this very moment in time is $243,000 and with like 59 cents.
Okay.
So
That's the 80%.
So no new construction fit that definition?
Not that I know of. Generally what's happening is that Habitat is building, when a big neighborhood goes in and has to have affordable housing for the zoning that they want, Habitat comes in and builds those houses because it's really hard to do that. And so part of that, a big part of it is zoning. The current zoning, the R2 is 2 lots per acre, and this is only 3 blocks that way. And so that's, I mean, that's a lot. That's a very small use for all of the utilities we have in the ground and the 100 feet of road that we have in front of these houses. I mean, I don't think that pencils out for the county to maintain. The maintenance for that is going to far outweigh the revenue that is generated from having houses there. So that's so that's what zoning is currently demanding. So, and those large lots are disappearing. I don't know if you've noticed, but in the past 5 years, it seems like there's a million projects going up everywhere in this area. It seems like everything's being bought up. So those lots are getting scarce. Those lots are getting really high priced. And what we're looking at is about $100,000 per single-family lot. And so I want to talk about the value proposition of that, because in order for a neighborhood to be stable, there's a certain range that the houses, so the lots have a certain value that they have on the open market, and then the structures that are put on it have a certain value. And what happens is if the lots start to eclipse the value of the actual structures on the site, you get an unstable condition where someone is likely to just buy the lot, just knock the house over and build something new. Or someone will go and like shadow buy a bunch and then make a big block to do something and figure out a way to rezone it or do something like that. Not that that's happened in Crozet, I think, but maybe it has. Anyway, so creating stable neighborhoods has a lot to do with value. It has a lot to do with keeping the value of the lots in proportion with the total value of each property. And so what happens is when you have a $100,000 lot, you generally have a $400,000 to $500,000 house on it, and that's a stable condition. But say the lot goes to $300,000, all of a sudden you're creating an unstable condition. So what's happened is zoning has created, it's demanding expensive housing. And so and that's really why we want to rezone this property, because, and I have a really boring slide coming up, super boring, but it's going to go into exactly the different scenarios and why why we need this scenario. So. Oh gosh. Okay. All right. So anyway, so the idea is that we have 3 just market rate houses. The 1,700 square foot houses are market rate. The 2 would be actual affordable units according to the county, which that's and those 2 units are above the comp plan's suggested density.
To let you know, you've got about 10 more minutes.
Thank you.
All right. So then there's 1 left over that's kind of a smaller unit that will be affordable too, but not necessarily. We'll kind of keep it so that they'll be in the market, the regular market. So this is just a rendering of the inside of the house. The idea is that they're going to be, high value space. All right, project scenarios. This is the. I'm going to do this really quickly. So the current zoning is 2 lots.
This is not the boring slide.
So it goes back to the value proposition that I was saying before. So the lot is worth $200,000, $100,000 each. That makes 2 houses at $400,000 to $500,000. We rezone to the comp plan density, that's 4 units. So with the infrastructure price gets really high, like in relationship to the lots. So you have an infrastructure price of $100,000 or $200,000 for the whole site, and you've got the lot price of $200,000. So you got 400 divided by 4, that's $100,000 a lot. That's still $400,000 to $500,000 houses. So that still hasn't hit my affordability, but I am not doing this project unless there's affordable housing. So 5 units. So this is where it starts to get better. The infrastructure price goes up a little bit, but not a lot. So you take 450 and you divide it by 5, but you gotta have an affordable house, which means that the lot has to be only 50 because you're targeting 200 to 240 for your affordable house. You need to get to 50 unless you subsidize. But I don't want to subsidize because that's cheating. It's not cheating. We might actually have Habitat build these. It's not cheating, but what happens is if you do 50, you still have 4 houses that have $100,000 lots. You still have $400,000 to $500,000 houses for those 4. So rezoning to 6 is where the magic happens. So the infrastructure price stays the same as in 5, but you get 2 houses that are affordable at 50, and that slices what's left. And then what happens is there's a little magic that happens. These 4 houses that are left over, all of their lot prices go down. So the value of those houses also can go down. So you don't have to have $400,000 to $500,000 houses anymore. You can inch them all back. You can build 1,700 square foot houses. Because at $400,000 to $500,000 houses, those are big houses, and that's not really what I'm interested in. So that's the boring slide, but the size of this project makes it really easy to see it. It makes it easy to really see the numbers, and that's why I wanted to get this out, especially when we're thinking about the comprehensive plan. And when we talk about neighborhoods, I'm not talking about Old Trail here. I'm not talking about big new places. I'm talking about neighborhoods. I'm talking about St. George Avenue. I'm talking about Orchard Drive. I'm talking about Hilltop Street. These neighborhoods are extremely vulnerable when this behind us turns into a downtown. The value of the lots on there will flip them upside down. The neighborhoods will get unstable. People will always be thinking about how much they can get for their house, and so people will lose that sense of, oh, I want to be here forever, because they all of a sudden can pay out like $700,000 for their house. So the only way to increase the value of the properties that are there and keep the people that are there in those neighborhoods is to strengthen them. And the only way to really do that is to thicken them up. So things like accessory units, and I'll actually talk more about that later. But the problem is the thickening of these neighborhoods is a rezoning, and little projects don't happen easily with rezoning, because, I mean, this is gonna take me a while to get this approved. So, so bigger developers have the time and the resources and the energy and the knowledge to get the rezoning done. But, and I just had to put that on there. I don't mean to pick on the view. It might be great, I don't know. And I don't mean to pick on Stanley Martin with Pleasant Green either. I actually kind of like what they're doing there. But they do create big projects. You're not injecting energy and strength into the neighborhoods. You are building something in there. And so that's why we really need by right options to do this strengthening of neighborhoods. And we don't currently have those.
If this is energy efficient, why is it small units as opposed to where the insulation issues of having
multiple units together? It's more maintenance to the scale. It has to do with the scale of the neighborhood. I think duplexes would work fine here, but there are single-family houses all around here. We're planning to build these to net zero, and that's actually what I do for a living, is design net zero housing. I don't know if anyone's a nerd as much as me, but passive house is my bread and butter for what I do. This is actually a picture of what it is now, and this is from the same vantage point. So it's a totally different. It's the same scale as what's going on in the neighborhood already.
So I know you just got like 5 minutes. I just want to see maybe Cameron and Andrew. I know we have a lot of time to get in this, but like based on the feedback that we're getting on the Crozet Master Plan update and this kind of stuff, these kinds of projects, how does that fit in with the kind of things we're hearing and about what people want to see in Crozet? And
so we both have given the county model ordinances that they could inject. So that's what's exciting, is that we're hoping that this could be used as kind of like a model, because it's so small and kind of the impact is so easily. But anyway.
Yeah, this is a master plan update. We're not updating zoning at this time, but I think this is an example of what we talked about with bungalow courts and sort of missing middle and infill projects, what this could look like. I think it's similar in a lot of ways, similar to the form that's kind of recommended with that. And I think we've heard a lot of interest in this sort of housing type, again, that's more respectful of scale of neighborhoods. But I think there's a question with our land use map as we move forward, how we decide where that is.
Chris, I think it's going to be a good time for me to speak up here. The two neighbors of this gentle density development are here tonight, and both of us approve of this. We like the concept. For me, it's karma. I was the state director of Habitat for Human Energy for 20 years, so I can't possibly do a NIMBY thing. I would if it were not something perhaps like Chris is proposing. I'm in that house that some people in Crozet still refer to as the new house, the one that's built green and accessible and got a lot of attention when it first came up. And this just fits beautifully into my concept of neighborhood. And Audrey is very much in favor as well.
Thank you.
And Chris, will you be my neighbor?
will you be my neighbor?
How did you get this sweater?
This lady's talking positively about your project because she sees that bamboo slowly overtaking her house. So she has ulterior motives.
I just want to say that we talk a lot about affordable housing. This implements it without subsidies. And I think we need to find some clever new ordinances that allow this kind of development to take place. And I just am super supportive of, let's try it and see. You've got supportive neighbors, and you've got somebody who's willing to go through 500 hurdles to make it happen. Let's just try it.
We're going to be posting. Chris has a website, the Housing Lab, and we're going to try to post all the different hurdles so that there can be kind of a test case for like, okay, well, if we pick apart that hurdle, we can decrease the price of the home eventually. So the Housing Lab, right?
Yes.
Well, will others want to try it themselves?
Yeah.
If it's successful, then there can be kind of a learning.
Yeah, I don't know if you have any more things
really want to say if we just are.
No, the questions are fine.
It's really, my question is, I don't know how I'm going to build a trail through Bamboo, but that's going to be an issue. However, the 900 square foot house, I know people are scared of that house. I got to tell you, I lived for 30 years in a house that was 980 square feet, and I raised my daughter there. It's not a tiny house, it's a perfectly fine size for a house, and people should not be afraid of 900 square foot houses.
When I show you the renderings, you definitely won't be afraid of them.
Will what we're seeing here be available on the website you mentioned?
Yes. Yes, I can put the actual slide deck on there. Yeah, I can definitely.
It'd be good to review and share.
What's the actual website? Because
Housinglab.org.
And is that live now, or?
There is a page for it, but I don't have this exact slide deck on there. But I can put it up tonight, or past night. It's past my bedtime.
What would you say to somebody who wanted their large house to be subdivided for the same type of economics and ethics?
I say that it has to have the right form. So I've seen places where this would work really well, and but it takes a lot of creativity to figure out how to put it together. But I think that's I think like a back parcel is a good place for these kind of things. I can talk all day about that.
I like these words like community and eco-friendly and so on. I live about 7 or 8 houses up on Orchard Drive, and my concern is habitat removal. I know bamboo is considered, a pest plant, but in the morning, if you get up early enough, you can see a pair of coyotes that are denning down at the bottom of our property by the creek, going downstream, and they hang out in the bamboo down there. So I'll caution you about letting your little girls play down there. But in spring and summer, we have bears that come up and down the creek there. They get into our trash, they destroy our fingers, but they're there and they're cool, but they're losing their habitat. We have deer come up and down, there's fox and just, any number of things. And all over Crozet, we're taking everything away. And that little stream right down there, it's just a wildlife sanctuary, really. And so that's my concern, is taking away more of that.
We're not taking away any of it. Well, now the bamboo has moved past, but only the open areas are what we're actually proposing to put up here. Put up anything else.
There's a slide that shows what's being dedicated for green space.
That's on the site plan, yeah. Let's see. You can see this all stays. That's all the stream buffer. It's 100 feet. So we're planning to improve other things too, and put in green stormwater management stuff wherever we can. Habitat's important. I totally agree.
Yeah, last question. Any more comments? Okay.
How fast can I talk?
I can talk quickly. I don't know how quickly you want to talk. I think we're good. I think we're good. So I was hoping to have more time to talk tonight, but we don't have a lot of time. So I just want to have a chance to really debrief after the last 2 character workshops with the master plan. So I'm hoping maybe next month we'll have a little bit more time. I think we have a couple other community meetings that will come next month as well. So maybe not. We'll try to find a way to debrief some of the land use conversations. These are both presentations that were pretty relevant to some of the topics that we discussed. Our plan is moving forward. We have a housing focus group next Friday afternoon from 11 to noon. We'll talk about some of the same issues. Everyone's invited to come out and share concerns or their thoughts on housing in Crozet, about affordability and any housing needs out here. So all our encouraged to attend. I'll be next Friday, the 21st from 11 to noon at the Meadows Community Center. We'll probably send out an email to the speaker too about other upcoming events. I think we're planning to come back and have do a couple pop-up office hour sort of things. Hopefully bring out some revised land use information for you all. Our next workshop will be in April with connectivity, so we get a little bit of time. We'll do some other smaller focus groups Next month in March, we'll have an architecture and preservation focus group. We'll focus on discussions like the historic district that we have. Again, how do we handle change in historic neighborhoods, and also downtown design guidelines is what we probably do the main focuses there. So I don't think I have a full time for discussion with you all tonight, but are there any questions from you all?
I have one question. I thought, and maybe I'm wrong, but staffing for you guys, there might kind of be a little break in some of the community meetings. Is that true still, or are you trying to?
For the large workshops we do in high school, the next one will be in April, but over the next month or two, we're basically doing, a couple focus group every 2 weeks or
It's
so.
really just that there's no big meeting.
Yeah, no bigger meetings.
And I'll
I
get some
wondered
for
if
those,
maybe what we could, if we could, because it's your time, but something to think about is take advantage of that time that, we aren't able to engage the community because of staffing needs that you guys have, but that we can get you with this group and talk about some of the things in more detail instead of, given whatever schedule stuff happens with the CCAC, but I wonder if that's an opportunity for us, if we have time on our schedule to have more time one-on-one with you, with members who can't come to the other meetings, and get into some of the questions that we've done in the breakout groups, because like last time, my breakout group had totally separate set.
We'll see, it's just
Yeah, so-
unfortunate we already have 2 community meetings for March.
Yeah,
So we're talking
but
about
maybe
March
the next,
meeting.
yeah, just, over the
But maybe
next
we can
couple
talk
months.
at April.
Yeah, so I think if there's interest in having a separate meeting, I think we would like to get some decent time with you all before we start to flesh out these exercises. I think there were some points of ambiguity from our responses from the last 2 workshops we worked through. Because I think our goal would probably be before we do the concrete workshop, we can bring some drafts, recommendations to the CAC, maybe to the planning commission for a work session, and start to firm these things up.
It would be a nice, breaking point for, here's where we are, here's some of the big things we've done.
So what I'm hearing is basically maybe we'll have an additional meeting.
Yeah, so I can send out a poll to you all if you want to do.
If it happens, if we, not maybe if April's full, maybe the next month.
Yeah, I think we want to have it, firmed up by April. We can wait till April, but if there's interest in doing a special meeting with you all, then I can send out a poll. And if anyone's, if we have enough people.
Let's just see what happens in April, and it's like every month is full, then we'll talk about having another date.
I think it'd be good to check in. You're not so rushed and ask questions.
Yeah, because every time.
I have 5 minutes, so we'll get through it.
A little bit.
Yeah, so if you have any questions, comments, please feel free to give me a call, shoot me an email, and we're gonna keep working on
Okay,
this.
thanks, and I appreciate any help putting away chairs.
Yep.
Thanks for coming.
Oh, yeah.